Welcome home, brave heroes. I'm Ash, this is AxianQuest, and if you've been following the channel for a while, you know that I have received and have reviewed just about every single AxianQuest deck from Axian Spice. That includes the Furniture deck, the Dungeon Events deck, the Heroic Skills deck, and the various Artifacts decks, which I have just combined to make one giant Artifacts deck full of weapons, wondrous treasures, and armor. But today, we're going to be reviewing something completely different. Today, we're going to be looking at Axian Spice's AxianQuest Infinite Dungeon deck. Now, this is quite a different offering. This is actually a way to play your game GM-less, DM-less, Zargon-less, Evil Wizard player-less. You can generate the dungeon as you go by following a sort of preset quest line that is also generated by the cards. Now, there's a lot of player agency from what I've seen in the official rule set that allows the players to kind of build the dungeon out as they go and explore it. And it'll all make sense pretty soon, even though the rule set that I've seen is not final. And so I'll avoid trying to explain anything with any detail because anything I could show off here might be significantly changed from the official release. By the time you see this video though, it will be completely ready and orderable from DriveThruRPG.com, so you will find the link to that in the description below. There are a couple of things to note about the Infinite Dungeon deck. One, these cards are very small. They're a lot smaller than the standard US size used by the other AxianQuest decks, and you might be forgiven for thinking that this is the EU size. They are actually significantly smaller than the European HeroQuest edition cards as well. It's not a big deal to me, but it will make some of the text on the more verbose cards kind of difficult to read. So we're going to unbox, unwrap, unsleeve these cards and see what they're all about. The second thing to note is that we actually have several decks in one here, and they've got similar colors to the AxianQuest deck you may or may not already own, but they are different decks, rest assured. We've got our standard order manifest here. We don't need this ever. The day that somebody incorporates this into their card system somehow mechanically will be the day that I would be very impressed, actually. That'd be really clever. And on the back, of course, we get a link, a QR code to the complete rule set. The red-backed cards are the quest cards. The green-backed cards are the side quest cards. The purple-backed cards are the evil mastermind cards. And the blue-backed cards are the dungeon cards. You got the most of the dungeon deck here. Now, these cards are all completely different from the existing AxianQuest decks. You don't need these to play Infinite Dungeon. I'm just noticing similar colors. Okay, so again, without committing to what I'm saying here, I will say that from the rule set, I was able to glean that the dungeon cards are actually placed on all of the rooms face down after you give them a good shuffle. And then you'll choose a room that does not have a card in it, and that will be your hero's starting room. And when the heroes leave, they are allowed to place 2 doors down in the corridor that don't even have to be in line of sight, as well as 1 block tile. So over time, we will actually be able to play the AxianQuest Infinite Dungeon game, which plays a lot more like its own thing rather than something that has to be specifically HeroQuest. So if we get time, I would love to actually play Infinite Dungeon with other tabletop dungeon crawler games. It might be kind of difficult to do with Dark World, but I think we could play this with Dragon Strike quite easily. Now, you might be wondering, how on earth do you build the entire scenario just from this deck? Well, we set up our map this way by setting down the dungeon cards in all of the rooms. And like I said, there are going to be nuances. That's not exactly how everything goes down, but that is a sort of an example. And then your monsters are going to be rolled for. So like in the preceding example, when the heroes go out into the corridor, if there are 2 doors that they've put down, they'll roll twice to see if there are as many monsters as there are doors wandering through the corridors. Now, I don't think it's possible as of the time of this video to take an existing quest like those from the game system or Keller's Keep or anything and incorporate them into the Infinite Dungeon, not without a lot of creative change. I don't think that's the spirit of what this is. But anyway, when your heroes enter a room that has a card face down, a dungeon card, you'll flip that over and that will tell you what is in the room. Look, we found a clue. And these clues are actually a big part of how the heroes solve the dungeon. Place a skull token to represent the clue. A hero can examine this clue token with a search action, which allows the player to turn face-up 1 card of an unexplored room. You cannot use this effect on a room that already has 1 or more face-up cards. Flipping this card, we get Goblin. If you're playing with 1 to 2 heroes, there are 2 goblins. If you're playing with 3 to 4 heroes, there are 2 goblins and an orc, and so on. Now, something I think is fascinating and pretty well done is that with this dungeon deck, you've actually got different categories of what's in each dungeon room, just like you would playing a regular game of HeroQuest. This is really well done. You've got your clues. You've got this red motif for your traps, purple motif for these magical traps. Your orange cards are going to call out bits of furniture or extra doors that might be in the rooms that you are searching. And it looks like there are exactly as many of these as there are pieces of furniture with the HeroQuest game system. So designed to use the game system perfectly. Then of course you've got your 3 colors of factioned monsters, including warriors, gargoyles, mummies, skeletons, zombies, abominations, orcs, and goblins. The method of placing the cards down onto the rooms and then flipping them over to reveal what's in the room doesn't have to work for just Infinite Dungeon. You could obtain this deck and use just this part of the deck, in particular the dungeon cards, to create rooms of dungeons. Let's take a look at the quest cards. I have 11 of these, and indeed some of them that are more verbose are going to be just a little bit of a strain because the text is really small. The camera doesn't do it justice because the camera has awesome resolution, but these are small cards. This is what it looks like to me. The Mysterious Letter. Brave heroes, you've received a mysterious letter that urges you to investigate the dungeon and seek your destiny in its depths. Upon finding the 4th clue, the mystery is solved, and then roll a die. I rolled a 3. Yes, I know it was a 10-sided die. 3. It was a trap. 1 orc per hero appears on the entrance stairs. So as you can see, some of these cards will play out such that there isn't really a valid end goal. The dungeon is just kind of a setup to get your heroes to go in and get meat grinded for goblins. But that's just really a way to present the lore of a given quest. So your dungeon is randomly generated, the placement of the enemies is randomly generated, the quest story is generated, and the outcome of the quest is generated as well. You could play a game like where your heroes have gone on these quests, and if they continuously roll failed outcomes, you can give them an automatic, or agree amongst yourselves if you're playing without an evil wizard player, to have an automatic best outcome for like every other quest or every 3rd quest. Now you will have rewards that may direct you to AxianQuest decks, such as drawing a random item from the AxianQuest Artifacts deck. I can't imagine a universe where you get this deck first and don't have the Artifacts deck, but it does say if available, so it's not required that you have it, just like I said earlier. If you don't, you would simply roll again if not available. And this is fine, because if you get a 4 or a 5, these are great things to have. 5 is a great pile of treasure worth 200 coins per hero, and 4 is the spirit of a legendary hero who appears and blesses the heroes, who gain +1 attack dice for the next quest. That could potentially make all of your heroes way stronger than whatever artifact I'm about to draw from this deck. Oh look, I got a Shield of Luck. Defend with +1 DD. You may reroll 1 single die per game. May not be used by wizards. Yeah, rolling a 5 in that situation, or rolling a 4 in that situation, is way better than drawing from that deck. Plus, if you have too many artifacts, you've got that stupid artifact Spectral Hunter to deal with. Let's look at another quest card. We have the Grim Idol. A dreadful idol of chaos strengthens the monsters inside the dungeon. The king will reward you if you find it and destroy it. The 4th clue is the idol. Use the gargoyle model. It has 2 BP and doesn't roll to defend, and is guarded by 1 orc per hero. These orcs roll 1 AD and 1 DD as long as the idol isn't destroyed. If the idol is destroyed, each surviving hero receives 2d6 times 10 coins. Really cool, and I will say that the rule set does have the instructions on how to move and play the monsters, so that you're not just stuck with monsters standing there not doing anything. It has instructions on melee, ranged, and magical for the monsters. So they'll always have a behavior that they follow. Let's look at another quest. This is the Mysterious Overlord. Brave heroes, you must find and defeat the cruel overlord that hides inside the dungeon to stop his monster's attacks against helpless travelers. The 4th clue is the overlord. Roll a die to determine the monster type, but it has 4 BP. If the overlord is defeated, each surviving hero receives 2d6 times 10 coins. So then we've got these side quests. So let's look at those. The Dreadful Champion of Chaos. A lieutenant of the forces of chaos hides inside the dungeon. His head is worth 100 coins. The first dreadful warrior you find is the Dreadful Champion. He has +1 AD. If the heroes defeat him, after leaving the dungeon, they will receive a bounty of 100 coins. Here's another side quest, the Enchanted Fireplace. An ancient legend says an enchanted fireplace can be found somewhere inside the dungeon. It was blessed by a fairy princess to revitalize the body and soul. If you find a fireplace and there are no monsters in the room, a hero can rest for 1 turn in the fireplace room. No action, no movement, and recover 1 lost BP and 1 lost MP. 1 use per hero. Alright, I've got to look at this one. It's the Lost Villager. A villager has been captured by the monsters and might be hidden inside this dungeon. Look, it's Frodo and the Eye of Sauron. Can the heroes find him? If you find a torture rack, roll a die. If the result is 5 or 6, you have found the villager tied to the rack and can free him immediately. If you find a cupboard, roll a die. If the result is 5 or 6, you have found the villager hiding inside it. The Villager. Use a model of your choice. And here are the villager's stats, played by the youngest player after their hero. Reward. If the villager makes it out of the dungeon, each hero is allowed to buy 1 item from the armory at half the price. The side quests are really things that aren't necessary in order to win a dungeon and escape with your lives intact, but they are things that will spice up the dungeon. I would like to see separate decks of side quests released and separate decks of quests released that would beef up your game. I actually already have a lot of ideas for how I could use these in lots of homebrew ways. All right, let's check out the Evil Mastermind cards. Felkar the Tyrant. Okay, so these are basically boss cards. We have his stats. We have the stat that is a variable based on how many heroes there are playing. And look at that, it can be up to 5 heroes. So that means your evil wizard player is actually able to get in on the action here. This one has a special called Darkness Nova. At the beginning of his turn, all heroes in the same room as him lose 1 BP unless they roll a white shield with 1 die. Goblin Worshippers. Felkar appears accompanied by 1 goblin per hero. Other monsters in the room are discarded, if any. And inside his dungeon, treat all abominations from dungeon cards as dreadful warriors. The miniature, Gargoyle. Okay, so these are further things that will affect your quest. I could easily see an expansion to this system because we have 6 cards here that represent these different bosses, and I don't want to spoil them, but they all have these different special actions and then instructions while you are inside his dungeon, as well as the miniature that should be used to represent this. These would all be monsters found in the base game system of HeroQuest, but you could very, very easily make an expansion deck of the Evil Mastermind cards and include the monsters that would be found in the expansions to HeroQuest. So you could have an Evil Mastermind that is represented by an ogre, and his special ability could just to be eating the heroes 1 at a time. No roll for defense, he just eats the heroes, they lose. Game over. I like this one, the Mysterious Mastermind. The real identity of the evil mastermind is a mystery. At the end of the campaign, if the heroes decide to go and face him, shuffle all the evil mastermind cards, including this one, and draw a new card at the beginning of the quest to kill him. If you get this card again, the evil mastermind's identity is still a mystery. You'll shuffle the evil mastermind cards again, this time without this one, and draw a new card when the heroes finally find him inside the dungeon. Okay, so I have thoughts and opinions that I would like to share about this deck. First of all, top of the list, this product. This is really well done. It is solid, it is clever. There are systems in place that will ensure your players don't have any sort of way to soft lock themselves, and up to 5 players are able to play together against the evil generative dungeon. The dungeon deck in particular is really well done. It never asks for more than you have with your game system. Everything in this deck is stuff that you have in your game system, and you'll never see stuff that's repeated per quest. Speaking of this dungeon deck, you do literally have millions of different combinations and configurations of the different features in the rooms on the board. Second, the quest cards. I love the idea of there being a potentially random or potentially you choose it yourself draw of a card that determines the beginning of a quest as well as its outcome. And a lot of these have multiple outcomes, which gives each quest replayability. So if you finish a quest and you're rewarded just enough by the fun that you've had and the treasure that you've gained in that quest, but you have a bad outcome, like you have to escape the dungeon now, or you get attacked by a boss monster and there's no reward, or the reward's not what you were going for, you can always retry this quest. Either accidentally draw it again and be happy that you have another opportunity, or decide amongst the players yourselves if you'd like to go ahead and retry the quest again. From what I've seen of the rule set, which again could still change, but I don't think it'll change much it is really solid. It is really well handled. The search for secret doors and trap actions are completely different with this system, so it does play a little bit more like its own system rather than a game of HeroQuest. But there are many methods to generating a dungeon and utilizing those rules, and the methods chosen to deal with traps and secret doors are the ones that work best with this system. The side quest cards are really cool as well. I love that there is extra flavor that you can have per generative quest. So even if you've played the quest before, there could be a new side quest. And of course, even if you've played the quest before, the dungeon that you're going to generate is now going to look completely different. As for cons, there are only two that I can think of. One, the size of the cards, that's probably my biggest con. I like that they're small, I just don't like that the text is so small. I still have pretty good eyesight, so I don't have any problems reading the text, but I think that there are folks with weaker eyes than mine who might have an issue. And like this, whenever it's verbose like this, you're going to have to peer in closely at it sometimes. But I understand they've got to be small so they can fit in the dungeon rooms. We don't have the luxury of a lot of space on the HeroQuest board. These spaces here on the map behind, this isn't the official board. This is one that has extra wall space, and so we've got a lot more room on this board, this mat, but the official game just has the 2x3 squares for its smallest rooms, and of course we can barely fit one card in there. We don't even have the luxury of 1-inch tiles in the classic board. My second complaint was going to be that you couldn't take any of the quests from the campaign books and just incorporate them into the cards, thereby eliminating the need for a Zargon player in order to play the base game. And you still wouldn't be able to do that in a way that's most accurate as to how the quests are designed. But actually, in saying that, I have figured out a way to make the quests using the Infinite Dungeon system. So let's take Quest 2 from the game system of HeroQuest, the Rescue of Sir Ragnar. Go through the dungeon deck and pull out all of the cards of the monsters that are not used in that quest, and all of the pieces of furniture, and only keep the traps that are going to be relevant to the traps found in the Rescue of Sir Ragnar. Only keep the furniture, only keep the monsters that are relevant to the Rescue of Sir Ragnar. And go ahead and put those aside. That's going to be your dungeon deck for this scenario. Then you will begin the scenario using the text and using the starting room for the Rescue of Sir Ragnar. You won't use the evil mastermind or quest or side quest cards, and then you'll be able to play through the dungeon and the third or fourth clue, or whichever clue you'd like to say, that's Sir Ragnar. Now all of the quest cards on the board will flip over, and that's going to be all of your greenskins being alerted to the rescue of their prisoner because of the sounding of the alarm. So that's just one way. There's a lot of different ways you could do that, and surely you can find some ways to share in the comments below, but you can't easily take the quests and simply convert them over. You'd have to have a method by which you do it, and it would take a few steps, but it could be done. So anyway, that is the AxianQuest Infinite Dungeon deck, or decks. I hope that I have shown you enough to make a sound decision. If you'd like this deck, you can always visit the link again in the description below to order it from DriveThru RPG. I want to thank Axian Spice for sending me this deck. Very kind and thoughtful gift, and I can't wait to play my own solo generative HeroQuest games right here on the channel, hopefully soon. Until next time, brave heroes, thank you very much for watching. Comment anything you'd like down below. If you'd like to see more homebrew HeroQuest stuff, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.